The morning sun spilled through the high windows of the grand estate, illuminating the polished marble floors and the delicate gilded edges of the walls. She moved through the hallways with grace, the soft rustle of her dress echoing in the cavernous space. Yet, despite the beauty that surrounded her, her attention was drawn to the man kneeling near the stairwell, dusting and arranging vases as though the world had no claim on him beyond servitude. His dark hair fell slightly over his sharp, angular features, and his eyes, so piercing, so impossibly aware, followed her every move. She had always assumed him to be just another servant, obedient and silent, until a shiver ran down her spine at the intensity of his gaze. "Be careful with that vase," she said lightly, her tone more playful than necessary. "It's fragile." He looked up at her then, and for a moment the air between them thickened. "Yes, my lady," he murmured, voice low, controlled, and yet carrying a weight she couldn't place. There was no hint of servility in his posture or his manner, only something, deliberate. She turned away, dismissing the sudden heat that prickled at the back of her neck, and continued down the hall. But the feeling lingered, an invisible tether pulling at her attention, refusing to let her ignore him. Her friends often joked about her tendency to notice the smallest details in the estate, but even they hadn't commented on the man. Perhaps it was the quiet way he moved, the calm precision that spoke of discipline and purpose, that set him apart from the other servants bustling about. She wondered briefly what his story was, though she never expected an answer. Servants didn't have stories that mattered in her world. Yet when she glanced back, he met her gaze again, holding it longer than politeness would dictate. A subtle curl of a smile brushed his lips, almost imperceptible, but enough to make her pulse quicken. Why would a servant, someone so lowly in the household hierarchy, carry such weight in his silence? The morning passed in a blur of meetings and pleasantries, but she could not shake the thought of him. Even when laughter and chatter filled the hall, she found her eyes searching for the dark hair, the impossible intensity behind his every movement. And somewhere deep in the corner of her mind, a whisper of unease tickled her thoughts. There was more to him than met the eye. Something dangerous, something magnetic, something that, if she were honest, she might already be drawn to. As the day waned and shadows stretched across the floors like liquid night, she caught him once more, adjusting a lantern by the grand staircase. Their eyes locked, and this time she didn't look away. The air between them thrummed, an unspoken promise hanging just out of reach. Little did she know, the pull she felt was no accident. And as the first stars pricked the evening sky, the quiet servant she thought she understood was already beginning to claim a place in her heart, whether she realized it or not. Cliffhanger, who was this man truly, and why did her heart respond to him as though the moon itself were tugging at her soul? Night had fallen over the estate, but the gardens shimmered under a pale moonlight, casting silver shadows across the perfectly trimmed hedges. She wandered through the paths almost unconsciously, still replaying the servant's piercing gaze in her mind. It wasn't just intensity, it was something deeper, something she couldn't name. Her hand brushed against the wrought iron gate as she paused, eyes scanning the tree line. That familiar shiver returned, crawling up her spine as if warning her of invisible eyes. And then she felt it, presence, not of a man, but of someone commanding, like the air itself recognized his dominance before she could. "He's not just a servant," she whispered to herself, words barely audible over the rustle of leaves. A shadow detached itself from the darkness near the fountain, moving with a fluid grace that made her heart stutter. Her breath caught and she took a cautious step back, but not enough to retreat. "You shouldn't be wandering alone," the man said, his voice calm yet carrying an authority that made her pulse spike. She blinked, realizing he had appeared without a sound. The servant, no, not a servant, stood before her, eyes glinting like obsidian in the moonlight. How, she stammered, words failing her. "Some things are easier to notice in the dark," he said, lips curling in that same faint, deliberate smile. "And some things are harder to ignore." Her stomach knotted. Why did his words feel like a challenge and a promise all at once? She tried to maintain composure, straightening her shoulders. What are you really doing here?" He stepped closer, the air between them charged. "Watching, protecting, waiting, that is all you need to know. For now. Every instinct screamed at her to turn away, but another part, the part that felt inexplicably tethered to him, refused. The stories she'd heard about the alpha of this region resurfaced in fragments. A powerful, untouchable man who ruled his pack with unmatched authority. She had never imagined him to be this quiet, controlled, yet undeniably magnetic presence. Her mind raced, could he really be? But no, servants didn't carry power like that, and yet the pull was undeniable, a thread tugging at her very being. He tilted his head slightly, sensing her thoughts. "You're thinking too much," he said softly, almost a whisper meant only for her. "Sometimes. The truth reveals itself when you stop questioning." Before she could respond, a distant howl echoed through the estate grounds, low and urgent. His posture shifted instantly, muscles coiling beneath his shirt like a predator sensing its territory. She froze, witnessing the transformation of his presence. From a servant-like figure to a commanding alpha, dangerous and untouchable. And in that instant, she realized something terrifying. The man she thought she understood was hiding far more than his role in the household. He was a force she could neither resist nor fully comprehend. Cliffhanger. What secrets did he hide behind those dark eyes? And why did her heart respond as if it had always known him? The grand ballroom glittered under 1,000 crystal chandeliers, each reflecting light onto polished marble floors that seemed to stretch endlessly. Laughter and music filled the air, mingling with the scent of roses and candle wax, but she barely noticed any of it. Her eyes kept drifting to him. The man she had once assumed was a mere servant, now moving through the room with a presence that commanded attention without a word. He was standing near the edge of the hall, observing the gathering with a quiet intensity that set him apart from the chattering guests. She felt a flutter in her chest, a mixture of curiosity, fear, and something dangerously close to desire. She tried to keep her composure, adjusting the folds of her gown as she approached the center of the room where the dancing had begun. But even in the swirl of color and laughter, she could sense him watching, his gaze following her movements like a predator circling its prey. "You seem distracted," he said suddenly, stepping up behind her. His voice was low, carrying just enough warmth to make her pulse leap. Startled, she turned, meeting his dark eyes. Just observing." She stammered, though she knew she was failing to mask the racing of her heart. "Observing can be dangerous," he murmured, taking a small, deliberate step closer. The heat from his body reached her before his words did, pressing against her in a way that made her breath hitch, especially when what you're observing might observe you back. Her cheeks flushed, and she looked away, trying to focus on the dancers gliding across the floor, but it was impossible to ignore the tension thrumming between them, a quiet electricity that made the air feel thick and alive. "You move differently than the others," he added, his tone casual, almost teasing. "Like you don't quite belong, yet you dominate attention without trying." She swallowed hard, her throat dry. I don't know what you mean." He smiled then, slow and deliberate, eyes glinting with something unspoken. "Of course you do. You always know more than you let on, but sometimes even that isn't enough to protect you." Before she could question him further, a rival pack member approached him, forcing a brief shift in his focus. In that split second, she saw the flicker of power and control in him, a man who was not just enigmatic, but dangerous, commanding, untouchable. Her chest tightened. Every instinct screamed that she should step back, that she should run, and yet another part of her, a part she didn't dare acknowledge, yearned to step closer, to understand, to be near. As the orchestra began a slow waltz, he extended his hand toward her, a silent invitation that carried more weight than any words could. Her fingers trembled as she brushed them against his, the spark that shot through her seeming to echo the pulse of the music itself. "You dance?" he asked softly, eyes dark and unreadable. I can try," she whispered, heart hammering in her chest. The moment she placed her hand in his, the rest of the room seemed to fade. All that existed was him, his warmth, his power, the way his eyes held her gaze without judgment yet demanded attention. The dance began, each step a delicate balance of tension and attraction, each turn a silent conversation neither dared speak aloud. And somewhere beneath the music and the flickering candlelight, a dangerous thought rooted itself in her mind. She was no longer sure if she was merely observing him, or if he had already claimed a piece of her soul she didn't yet understand. Cliffhanger, as the dance ended, a sharp whisper from the shadows hinted that their fragile closeness would not remain untested. The corridors of the estate were quiet now, the echoes of the evening's laughter and music fading into memory. She moved carefully, the silk of her gown whispering against the polished floors, but her mind was anything but calm. The dance still lingered in her senses. His touch, the intensity of his gaze, the way he had guided her without force yet commanded her attention entirely. A sudden movement in the shadows caught her eye. She froze, heart skipping a beat, realizing she wasn't alone. She ducked behind a marble column, curiosity overcoming fear, and pressed herself against the cool stone. From her hiding place, she could see him, not the man she thought she knew, but a figure speaking in low, urgent tones to another man she had never noticed before. "She's unaware," he said, his voice calm but laced with an authority that made her stomach twist. "But soon she will know, and when she does, there will be no turning back." The other man nodded silently, fear and respect mingling in his posture. "Are you certain she can handle it?" He exhaled slowly, dark eyes narrowing. "She doesn't have a choice. Fate has claimed her, and so have I." Her pulse raced. Fate claimed. She had always thought of him as a servant, a shadow in her daily life, and now the truth hinted at something far more dangerous, far more powerful. Something that made the air around him hum with tension. She stepped back slightly, nearly catching her foot on a loose floorboard. The sound made him tense, a predator's attention snapping toward her hiding spot. Her heart threatened to burst from her chest as she pressed herself further into the shadows, holding her breath. He didn't move, though. Instead, he turned back to his companion, eyes scanning the room with a control that seemed impossible for someone she had dismissed as a servant. Every detail, the measured tilt of his head, the subtle flex of his muscles, the way his voice had carried authority, painted a portrait of a man who belonged to no one but himself and the destiny he carried. Her mind swirled with questions, fear, and a strange, undeniable pull toward him. What did he mean by fate, and how could someone so commanding, so alpha, have hidden in plain sight for so long? Her fingers trembled as she brushed against the column for support, realizing that the night had shifted. Nothing would ever be the same, not her perception of him, not her understanding of the world, not the fragile sense of security she had clung to. As she retreated quietly, every step felt heavier, burdened with the knowledge that the man she thought she knew was far more dangerous and far more magnetic than she could have imagined. And somewhere deep within her, a spark of fear tangled with something darker, something thrilling, the undeniable attraction to a force she could neither resist nor comprehend. Cliffhanger, if she had thought the servant was harmless before, the truth lurking in the shadows promised consequences that would soon demand her heart, her trust, and perhaps her life. The garden was quiet under the pale glow of the moon, a soft breeze stirring the petals of the night, blooming jasmine. She stood at the edge of the fountain, hands clenching the edges of her gown, heart pounding like a drum against her ribs. Tonight, she had decided. Tonight she would speak her truth, regardless of fear or consequences. He appeared silently, as if drawn by some invisible thread, stepping into the moonlight with that same calm authority that had haunted her thoughts for days. His dark eyes fixed on her, unreadable yet piercing, and she felt a strange tremor in her chest. "I need to tell you something," she began, voice trembling. I can't stop thinking about you, about us." He regarded her quietly, expression unreadable, yet the tension in the air made her chest ache. For a heartbeat, she imagined he might return her words with the same longing she felt, but then he shook his head slowly. "You shouldn't," he said, voice low and steady. "You don't understand what you're asking for." Her breath caught. I don't care. I know there's something between us. I can feel it." He stepped closer, but not in a way that eased her anxiety. Instead, it was deliberate, controlled, yet it carried a weight that pressed down on her heart. No, you don't understand the world I inhabit, the dangers, the enemies, the rules. You're not ready, not yet. Her knees felt weak. But I don't care about danger. You will. He interrupted, eyes darkening with a shadow of something she couldn't place. And I cannot let you suffer because of me. You're better than this. Better than being caught in a life you cannot control. I won't let that happen to you. Humiliation burned in her chest, sharper than she had expected. She had dared to hope, dared to imagine a connection, and now he was rejecting her, not because of her, but because of a world she didn't even understand. Around them, the garden seemed suddenly colder, the moonlight harsh against the vulnerability she had exposed. I thought you cared, she whispered, voice cracking. I do, he said quietly, almost unbearably. That's why I'm stepping back. That's why you must stay away from me, for your own good. Tears stung her eyes, and for the first time, she felt the weight of his hidden identity pressing down on her. He wasn't just a man. He was something far larger, far more dangerous than she could have imagined. And now, he had rejected her. Her hands trembled as she turned to leave, each step heavy with disappointment and longing. She wanted to scream, to demand that he fight for her, but she knew, deep down, that he wouldn't, not yet. He watched her go, eyes lingering on her retreating form, jaw tight. Something in him twisted, a mix of frustration, desire, and the unshakable pull of fate. He knew this was not over. He could feel it in his bones, cliffhanger. She thought she had lost him forever, but fate had already begun weaving a bond neither of them could ignore. The night had settled like a velvet cloak over the estate, and the world felt quieter, almost suspended, as if holding its breath. She lay in her bedchamber, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the garden over and over. His rejection still burned, sharp and unrelenting, yet there was something she couldn't shake, a lingering pull, a whisper in the air that tugged at her very being. Her dreams that night were restless. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, and she could hear him, his voice, soft and commanding, calling her name even when she was awake. She stirred, heart pounding, a warmth spreading through her chest that she didn't understand. It was as if some invisible thread had been tied between them, one she could neither cut nor ignore. Outside, the moon hung low and full, casting silver patterns across the floors. A soft tapping at her window startled her, and before she could react, he was there. Not breaking in, not intruding, but standing just outside, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. "You're awake," he said, voice calm yet heavy with meaning. "I couldn't sleep," she whispered, heart hammering as she stepped closer to the glass. Nor could I," he interrupted, his gaze locking with hers. There was a tension there, undeniable, electric, something more than longing, something primal. "It's unavoidable," he admitted, a hint of vulnerability slipping through his usual control. "No matter how much we try to resist, the bond will not let us." She shivered, unsure whether it was fear or anticipation. "Bond? What? What do you mean?" he exhaled, eyes never leaving hers. "Some ties are deeper than understanding. Fate marked us, and even rejection cannot undo it. You feel it too, don't you?" Her chest tightened as she realized he was right. That pull, the restless nights, the way her heart seemed to recognize him even when her mind rebelled. She could no longer deny it, and yet fear twisted her stomach. "But we can't, your world, your pack. It's dangerous, I don't belong there." His hand reached out, brushing a lock of hair from her face, gentle and deliberate. "You belong wherever I am," he murmured, voice husky with restrained emotion. "I would never ask you to choose danger. Not willingly, but the bond, it chooses for us." A shiver ran through her as the air between them thickened, heavy with unspoken desire. Even as she tried to retreat, she felt the invisible tether tighten, pulling her closer to him, to the man who had once seemed a servant but now radiated dominance and inevitability. Her fingers twitched against the cold window pane, wishing she could reach him, touch him, and yet knowing she could not. But the dreams, the whispers, the pull of the bond, they were relentless. It was a claim she could feel in her very soul, one that defied reason, distance, and fear. He lingered in the moonlight, eyes softening yet glowing with unspoken power. Soon, he whispered, soon you will understand that this is who we are, and no matter what happens, nothing can sever what has been sealed by fate. And as the moonlight bathed the room in silver, she realized with a thrill and a shiver that he was already part of her thoughts, her dreams, her heartbeat, and that the hidden mate bond had begun its quiet, unstoppable work. Cliffhanger, somewhere deep in the shadows, forces within the pack began to stir, sensing the bond that neither of them could yet fully control. The following evening, the estate seemed unusually tense. Word had traveled fast. The rival alpha of a neighboring pack had arrived in the region, and whispers of challenge and confrontation threaded through the air like electric current. She could feel it before she even saw him, the shift in the atmosphere, the subtle tightness in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched as he surveyed the horizon. He moved with a predator's grace, silent yet utterly dominant, every step commanding the space around him. She had grown accustomed to his quiet presence, to the pull of the bond threading through them, but tonight was different. Tonight, she realized just how dangerous his world truly was. Stay close. He murmured, brushing past her with a hand that lingered only slightly too long, enough to send a shiver down her spine. She nodded, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt, not just physically, but emotionally. The rival alpha arrived shortly after dusk, a towering figure with eyes like storm clouds and a confidence that screamed challenge. The two men circled each other with words veiled in civility but edged with danger. Their voices were low, clipped, and charged with unspoken power. "You've grown bold," the rival said, voice smooth and dangerous, claiming territory, ignoring warnings. "Foolish." He met the gaze without flinching. "Boldness is a necessity when protecting what's mine," he replied evenly, eyes flicking toward her for only a heartbeat before returning to the threat before him. She held her breath, feeling the tension coil in the air like a live wire. Every instinct screamed to run, yet the pull of the bond anchored her in place, forcing her to witness this dangerous dance. Her heart beat faster, and she realized, with a mix of fear and fascination, how deeply she was tethered to him. The rival's sneer didn't reach his eyes, but it carried venom. "You always get what you want, don't you?" he spat, though the words barely masked a hint of fear. "That depends on whether it's mine by right or by fate." He replied, voice steady, controlled. But beneath it a growl lurked low and warning. Her stomach twisted. She had heard tales of alpha confrontations, of loyalty tested and territories won with blood, but seeing it firsthand, the dominance, the calculated strength, the subtle undercurrent of danger, was far more terrifying than she had imagined. Yet it was also exhilarating. The rival hesitated, sensing the power she could feel radiating from him. And then, as if deciding the fight would not be won tonight, he retreated with a final glare, leaving the estate silent but charged with residual tension. She exhaled shakily, realizing her pulse hadn't calmed. He turned to her then, eyes dark and unreadable, but softer this time. "You saw that?" he murmured. I did," she admitted, breath uneven, "and I understand now why you warned me. Your world, it's dangerous." "Yes," he said simply, stepping closer, "and it will only get more dangerous before it gets better. But you are not to be underestimated. Fate has marked you as mine, and nothing, no rival, no enemy, can change that." A shiver ran through her as the invisible thread of the hidden mate bond seemed to tighten, pulsing with urgency. She knew, without question, that she was now irrevocably part of his world, whether she wanted it or not. Cliffhanger? Somewhere in the shadows, unseen eyes watched, calculating, waiting for the moment when the bond between them could be broken. Or exploited. The days that followed blurred into a tense rhythm of silence and stolen glances. The pack estate, once filled with quiet duties and predictable order, now thrummed with a different kind of energy, an undercurrent of anticipation and danger. He had doubled the guards after the rival's visit, his commands curt, his tone sharp. Yet when she crossed his path, something flickered behind his eyes, an emotion he tried and failed to bury, That night, rain lashed against the windows. She couldn't sleep. The storm mirrored the turmoil within her, confusion, fear. And something else, something that set her pulse racing whenever she remembered how his voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. Fate has marked you as mine. Unable to resist, she stepped out into the corridor. The estate was dark, save for the flicker of lanterns leading toward the training grounds. That's where she found him, shirtless, rain soaked, the moonlight catching on every ripple of muscle as he moved. She froze, the scent of the rain mingled with his. Wood smoke, pine, something raw and magnetic. He turned, eyes locking onto hers instantly. You shouldn't be out here, he said, voice rough. Neither should you, she countered, though her voice wavered. He approached slow and deliberate, each step an invitation and a warning. I can't sleep, he admitted. Too many things on my mind. Like the rival Alpha, like you. Her breath hitched. The words hung between them, carried by the storm. The air crackled, not with lightning, but with the raw, electric tension neither could deny anymore. I told myself I wouldn't get close. He murmured, stopping inches from her, that the bond was dangerous, but every time you look at me like that. His hand lifted slightly, hovering near her cheek but not touching. It gets harder to remember why I should stay away. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She wanted to speak, to tell him she felt it too, the pull, the ache, but fear tangled her tongue. What if this was another rejection? Then don't stay away, she whispered, almost against her will. The words broke something between them. His restraint snapped, and for a moment the world stilled. His fingers brushed her jaw, trailing down to her throat, where her pulse beat wildly beneath his touch. He leaned closer, voice low. If I give in, there's no turning back, once the bond is sealed. I know, she whispered, trembling. Maybe I don't want to turn back. For a heartbeat, he looked at her like she was the only thing anchoring him to reason. Then he stepped back, the storm in his eyes returning. Not yet, he said hoarsely. Not until it's safe. And before she could protest, he was gone, leaving her in the rain, breathless and shaking, the echo of his voice haunting her. Not until it's safe. The full moon rose high over the estate, casting silver light across the trees and bathing the grounds in an ethereal glow. She walked through the gardens, trying to steady her racing heart, but the air was thick with tension. Every shadow seemed to whisper danger, every rustle a warning. Then she saw him, standing at the edge of the clearing, his stance rigid, eyes fixed on something she couldn't see. His calm, commanding aura had shifted. The storm she had felt in the corridor before was now tangible, crackling in the night. Before she could approach, a figure emerged from the shadows, a pack member she had trusted. The man's face was cold, eyes glinting with betrayal. You shouldn't be here, he said, voice flat, but his movements spoke of hidden intent. He turned toward the newcomer, growling low in his throat, the warning vibrating through the clearing. Step back, he said, his gaze darkening, muscles tensing as if ready to strike. The pack member smirked, raising a blade that glinted in the moonlight. You think you own everything, he spat, but some of us see through your power. Time slowed. She realized in horror that the betrayal was no accident. The hidden mate bond had drawn her into danger she hadn't fully understood. She tried to move forward, to warn him, but her feet felt rooted to the ground, terror mingling with the pulse of desire and helplessness. He stepped in front of her, body coiled, every muscle taut. The air around him seemed to shift, a dark, protective aura that made the world narrow down to just him and the threat before them. You'll regret this, he growled, eyes flashing. A flash of motion, a growl, a snarl, and she saw the rival pack member falter, surprise breaking his calculated movements. The Alpha moved with precision, power radiating from every controlled movement. And yet she could feel the danger piercing through. He was protecting her, yet every second risked them both. Her chest tightened as she realized the depth of his feelings. This was no longer just attraction or slow, burning tension. He would risk everything for her, his mate, and the bond they could not yet name. The pack member stumbled, retreating into the shadows, and the Alpha's gaze swept over her. Stay close, he said, voice low, rough with emotion. No matter what, you are mine, understand, I do, she whispered, trembling, And for the first time, fear and desire collided, making her feel alive and vulnerable all at once. Cliffhanger, even as the danger receded, she realized the threat had only revealed the beginning of the war. The rival Alpha would return, and nothing would keep them apart. The night was impossibly still, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of wolves. She wandered through the moonlit forest, unsure why she had left the safety of the estate. The bond, the invisible thread that had been tightening for weeks, pulled her forward, unrelenting, dragging her toward him whether she wanted it or not. And there he was, waiting, standing beneath the canopy of silvered trees, eyes reflecting the moonlight, body tense yet commanding, every inch of him radiating authority and desire. "You came," he murmured, voice low, edged with relief and something deeper. I couldn't stay away," she admitted, voice trembling. "I can't stop thinking about you." He took a slow step closer, eyes darkening. "You shouldn't be here. You're not ready for what comes next." "I am," she said, surprising even herself with the firmness in her tone. "I don't care about danger. I don't care about anything, not if it means I'm with you." For a moment, silence stretched between them, the world narrowing to just the two of them under the full moon. Then he moved, closing the space until the scent of him, wood, rain, something primal and intoxicating, overwhelmed her senses. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing lightly over her skin, and she shivered under his touch. "You don't understand," he murmured, voice rough with emotion. "Once I claim you, there's no turning back. Your life will be mine in ways you cannot yet imagine." "I want that," she whispered, stepping closer, pressing against him. "I've wanted it for weeks, months. I don't care who knows or what it means." He silenced her with a hand over hers, resting over her chest where her heart hammered so fiercely it almost hurt. "You are mine," he growled, voice low and possessive, eyes locking with hers. "Fate has bound us together. No rival, no enemy, no force in this world can change that. I claim you and you will understand. Eventually you'll accept it." Tears prickled her eyes and she nodded, breathless, caught in the gravity of his power and his undeniable claim. I accept you," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief and longing. A slow, almost predatory smile curved his lips. "Good," he said, voice rough, almost feral. He leaned closer, brushing his forehead against hers, letting the quiet intimacy of the moment sink deep into them both. "Because I will protect you, and I will never let anyone take you from me." In that moonlit clearing, with the silver light bathing them, the bond between them pulsed with a new intensity. Fear, desire, and fate intertwined, leaving them no room for hesitation. Her heart, his heart, and the invisible thread connecting them. Everything was irrevocably sealed. And for the first time, she understood that the man she had once mistaken for a servant was far more than that. He was her alpha, her protector, her mate. And now, finally, he had claimed her entirely. Cliffhanger, as their hearts aligned under the full moon, the distant howl of a rival pack warned that their trials were far from over. The estate was alive with tension the following morning, a sharp contrast to the quiet intimacy of the night before. Word had spread fast. The rival Alpha was not finished, and he intended to challenge the man who had claimed her as his mate. The air felt electric, as if every living thing sensed the impending storm. She stayed close, trailing behind him through the halls, heart pounding, not with fear, but with anticipation. For weeks she had watched him from afar, glimpsing power and control. Now she would see it up close, in all its feral, commanding glory. The rival Alpha arrived in the courtyard, his presence large and imposing, the tension in his pack palpable. He spoke first, his voice loud enough to echo against the stone walls. "You think yourself untouchable, that your claim is unquestionable." Her protector stepped forward, jaw tight, every movement controlled yet brimming with lethal potential. "You misjudge me," he said evenly, voice low but deadly. "My claim is not a matter of choice. It is fate, and I will not let you threaten what is mine." She felt a thrill of fear and excitement ripple through her. Every word, every glance between the men radiated danger, and yet she could see the way his eyes softened whenever they flicked to her. She was the center of this confrontation, and he was unwavering in his devotion. The rival stepped closer, a predator sizing up its competition. You will not hold her, he hissed. I have strength, power, allies. You are not untouchable. I do not need to be untouchable. He replied, voice steady, almost mesmerizing in its control. I need only to be dominant where it matters, and she is mine. Her breath caught as he shifted, stance low and predatory, movements fluid and precise. The rival alpha faltered, sensing the raw authority radiating from him, the kind of dominance that could not be questioned. She realized then, with awe and a surge of love, that this man, this alpha who had once been a servant in her eyes, was everything he claimed to be and more. The rival hesitated, glancing at his own pack for support, but the moment had passed. Her alpha did not give ground. With a low growl, the rival finally stepped back, retreating under the weight of undeniable dominance. Victory had been claimed without a single blow. She exhaled, heart racing, and stepped closer to him. He turned to her, gaze softening for just a heartbeat. Do you see now? He murmured. No one can threaten what fate has bound. Yes, she whispered, voice trembling.
I see, I understand. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, a small, tender gesture amidst the aftermath of power. And remember, he said quietly, voice low and intimate, I will protect you no matter what, always.
The pack might have witnessed his strength, but she had witnessed his devotion, and it burned in her chest brighter than any display of power could. Fate had claimed them, and the bond between them had never been more undeniable. Cliffhanger, even as the rival retreated, she sensed new threats lurking in the shadows, secrets that could still tear them apart. The estate had quieted after the confrontation, but the tension lingered like a storm cloud refusing to dissipate. She wandered the halls alone, thoughts tangled in confusion, fear, and an ache she couldn't quite name. The alpha's strength and devotion had been undeniable, but now whispers of hidden truths gnawed at the edges of her mind. A soft knock at her door startled her. She turned to find one of the elder pack members, robes flowing and eyes solemn. We need to talk, he said quietly. It concerns your family, your heritage. Her chest tightened. My family? What about them? He hesitated, choosing his words with care. You were not born like the others. Your blood carries a legacy, one that has been hidden for your protection. But now that the bond has been claimed, the truth cannot remain buried. Her heart pounded, a mixture of dread and curiosity. Hidden? What do you mean? You are of alpha blood. He explained, descended from a line meant to lead and protect, but your lineage was kept secret to shield you from rivals and enemies who would have seen you destroyed. Shock froze her in place all this time. I thought I was ordinary, a servant in my own life, and now. Her voice faltered as she realized how completely her world had shifted. The elder stepped closer, gaze softening. This is why the bond reacted so strongly to your mate. The alpha senses what others cannot. Fate recognizes the strength in your bloodline, but beware, the revelation of your lineage will make you a target. Rivals will come, seeking to exploit your power. She felt a chill run through her, the weight of destiny pressing down on her shoulders, and yet, alongside the fear was a flicker of pride and a quiet, growing certainty. She was no longer just a passive player in this world. She was central to it. Vital, powerful, and bound to the alpha who had claimed her. Her thoughts immediately went to him. How would he react to this revelation? Would he see her differently, or would the danger overwhelm them both? She didn't have to wait long. He appeared in the doorway, eyes dark and unreadable, as if he had felt the shift before she could even speak. You've heard, he said softly, stepping toward her. His presence was both grounding and overwhelming, the bond between them thrumming with urgency. I have, she whispered, and I don't know if I'm ready for this. He reached for her, cupping her face with a gentleness that belied his power. You were never meant to be ready. You were meant to be mine. Fate has chosen, and no secret, no threat can undo it. As his words sank in, she realized the full scope of the life now laid before her. Danger, desire, destiny, all intertwined with the man who had claimed her heart. The world she had known was gone, shattered like glass, and in its place rose something far more potent. A life bound by fate, by power, and by love. Cliffhanger, but even as destiny revealed itself, distant whispers warned that enemies were already moving, seeking to test the strength of their bond. The night wrapped the estate in a heavy, velvety darkness, the only light coming from the silver moon and the flickering lanterns lining the paths. She found him waiting in the secluded grove behind the house, the air around him charged with a quiet intensity that made her heart race. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured, though the edge in his voice had softened. "I needed to see you," she replied, her voice trembling. I need to understand." He studied her for a long moment, eyes dark and unreadable. Then slowly he stepped closer, the invisible thread of their bond tightening between them. "You deserve the truth," he began, voice low, almost raw. "I rejected you not because of who you are, but because of what I feared for you." Her chest tightened. "What do you mean?" he exhaled, a sound heavy with emotion. "My world is dangerous. Rivals, enemies, politics. Everything I've built, everything I protect. It puts anyone close to me at risk. I saw you and I knew. If I let you in, you would face dangers you could never imagine. I thought I was protecting you." Tears pricked her eyes. "By pushing me away, yes," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "It was selfish in its way, but I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. Even if it meant losing my chance to be near you, I thought it was safer for you to stay away from me, from this life." Her heart ached both with sorrow and relief. "But you didn't run from me, not really. You've always been near, watching, protecting, even when I thought you hated me." He stepped closer, the intensity in his gaze anchoring her in place. "I never hated you. How could I? Fate chose you, and that bond doesn't lie. Every glance, every touch, every silent moment. It was all part of keeping you close, even when I had to push you away for your own safety." She trembled as he reached for her, brushing her hair from her face. "And now," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Now," he said, cupping her cheek, "I don't hide anything. I don't run. I claim you fully because you are mine, and I will never let you go. Not to rivals, not to fate, not to fear." The weight of his words, the depth of his confession, wrapped around her like a warm, protective cloak. Tears fell freely, and she stepped closer, pressing herself to him, feeling the strength and vulnerability entwined in his arms. "I understand," she whispered. "I trust you." He leaned down, forehead resting against hers, breath mingling, heartbeat syncing with hers. "And I will prove it," he murmured. "Every day, every danger, every moment. My life, my pack, my heart, you have it all forever." Under the silver light of the moon, the tension between them melted into an unspoken promise. A bond strengthened not just by fate, but by honesty, vulnerability, and unyielding devotion. Cliffhanger. Even as they embraced their closeness, the distant howl of enemies reminded them that peace was fleeting, and the true trials were only beginning. The full moon rose over the estate, silver light spilling across the grounds and casting long shadows. Tonight, everything would change. The rival Alpha's threats had escalated. Whispers of betrayal within the pack had grown louder, and the invisible threads of destiny had pulled them both to this moment. She followed him through the courtyard, her hand brushing against his, feeling the warmth and power in his grip. Every instinct screamed caution, but every heartbeat urged her forward. He had promised protection, and she trusted him implicitly, even as danger circled closer. The rival Alpha and his allies had gathered near the edge of the forest, muscles taut, eyes gleaming with malice. But her Alpha did not falter. He stood tall, unwavering, his aura commanding and unyielding, radiating dominance and raw strength. She felt the bond between them pulse, the hidden mate connection igniting with undeniable force, a tide of energy that neither challenge nor fear could break. "You will not take what is mine," he said, voice low and steady, carrying over the distance. "This pack, this bond, this mate. Everything I protect belongs to me. Leave now or face the consequences." A tense silence stretched between them. Then, with a snarl, the rival stepped forward, claws extended, muscles coiled for attack. But her Alpha moved like liquid power, fast, precise, controlled. Every motion was calculated, every strike a message. He would not yield, and no enemy could claim what fate had bound. She watched, heart racing, as he neutralized each threat without hesitation, each movement a masterful blend of skill, authority, and ferocity. And then the final rival, defeated, humbled, retreating, glanced at her with a glare that promised this was not over. Her alpha turned to her, breath heavy, eyes dark but softening as they met hers. "Are you hurt?" he asked, concern lacing his tone, though the adrenaline still thrummed in his muscles. "No," she whispered, stepping closer, hand still in his. "I'm safe because of you." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close beneath the moonlight, the storm of the past days dissolving into quiet triumph, together. He murmured against her hair, "We are stronger than any enemy, stronger than fear. Fate has made us mates, and nothing can undo that. Not now, not ever." She leaned against him, breathing in the scent of rain, pine, and something inherently him. Every fear, every doubt, every trial had led them to this moment. They were bound, unshakable, and unstoppable. The moon shone down, illuminating the promise between them. The pack had been tested, rivals repelled, and the hidden mate bond had proven unbreakable. In that silver light, she felt it, the undeniable certainty that no force in the world could ever sever what had been written in their hearts and sealed by fate. Cliffhanger, even in victory, whispers in the shadows reminded them that challenges remained, and destiny's path was never without peril. The first light of dawn crept over the estate, painting the world in soft hues of gold and rose. The trials, the confrontations, the betrayals, they were all behind them now, leaving only the quiet certainty of what had been claimed, sealed, and irrevocable. She stood at the edge of the forest, feeling the pulse of the hidden mate bond like a living thread connecting her to him. Every heartbeat, every breath, every thought echoed with the same undeniable truth. They were destined, and no force could undo it. He approached silently, as he always did, every step deliberate, radiating strength and calm authority. When he reached her, he didn't speak. He didn't need to. The bond between them conveyed all that words could not: protection, desire, devotion, and a promise that would last a lifetime. She looked up at him, eyes wide, heart full. "It's over," she whispered, voice trembling. "Everything that threatened us, it's gone." "Not entirely," he murmured, his lips curving in a small, knowing smile. "Life will always test us, but together. Nothing can break what fate has written." The wind stirred, carrying with it the scent of pine and rain, soaked earth, wrapping around them like a blessing. He reached for her hand, entwining fingers, and she felt the final pulse of the bond surge between them, sealing what had begun in secrecy, tested in danger, and proven through every trial. "I am yours," she said softly, tears shining in her eyes. "Always, and I am yours," he replied, voice low, steady, and full of quiet power. "By blood, by fate, by choice. Forever." He drew her close, lips brushing hers in a kiss that was both gentle and fierce, a culmination of longing, desire, and unspoken promises. Around them the pack stirred in the early morning, witnesses to the bond that had been fulfilled, a new era beginning with the dawn. She pressed her forehead to his, inhaling the warmth of him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat echoing her own. This was more than love. It was destiny, protection, passion, and partnership all fused into one unbreakable force, a life shared and a future forged together. The estate, the pack, the forests beyond, they all seemed to hold their breath, honoring the sealing of what had been written long before they had ever met. Fate had chosen them, and now, finally, the world could see it, could feel it, could accept it. Hand in hand, heart in heart, they stepped forward into the dawn, no longer bound by fear, secrecy, or uncertainty. Every challenge had led to this moment, every danger had strengthened the bond, and every heartbeat confirmed one undeniable truth. They were mates, sealed by fate, and nothing could ever undo it. The sun rose fully, spilling light across the forest and estate, bathing the alpha and his mate in gold, and for the first time in a long time, the world felt complete.